Mrs. Cagle's mentor is not here, so I'm going to let her kind of introduce herself a little bit before she gets started.
Hi everyone, my name is Madison Cagle. I'm currently a senior in the visual arts department, studying both graphic design and printmaking. And today I'm going to talk about my project that is the Nature versus Nurture Quilted Posters. This project was part of a commercial illustration course. In this course we specifically looked at alternative ways of pursuing illustration. So for this, the prompt was to design a poster series communicating concepts of cultural and individual significance. Now, when I first got this brief, I thought, well, that's a bit vague. What do I do with that? So over the next several days, my train of thought went from, okay, cultural, individual significance, let's talk about people. And what about patterns with people? And here lately in my own art, I've been exploring the significance of needle arts. So what if we compare social patterns to fabric patterns? And then I thought, wait a minute, here's an epiphany. What if I make a quilt? But what if it's not made of fabric? Let's make it out of paper. So these are my finished quilts. I actually have them with me here today. I really wanted to think about the intertwining of the environment someone's in and how they're born to what makes them who they are. So is it nature or nurture that determines one's identity, influence, and inspiration? I would argue both, and this is how I wanted to express that. So again, I wanted to explore the idea that all of these characteristics, identity, influence, and inspiration, can stem from both of these things. So let's talk about the process. How did I make these posters? Well, naturally, with me being a printmaker, let's make some prints. I used a monoprint technique. The first step was to gather local plant specimens from all around campus, all around Jacksonville, and that's how I visually wanted to represent nature. I used a monoprint printmaking technique where I had a sheet of plexiglass and I rolled printmaking ink onto it, arranged the plants, set down a piece of paper, and ran it through the press. And that came out with some really interesting results. The name of it is monoprint, so the point is that no two prints will look the same. When you first run it through, there's going to be really big contrast between the light and the dark, but if you take off that sheet of paper, set it aside, and move a few of the plants around, set down another sheet of paper, you'll get what are called ghost prints, which show the texture of each plant. It's a little bit lighter, and that comes into play later in my piece. So here we have a pile of several of my prints. I made several, and they were all ranging different sizes depending on what sizes of paper I was using. What's the next step in this project? Take my very favorite prints and destroy them, cut them up to make the quilt. And so to represent nurture, I wanted to show maps, because those are a really strong representation of where people are, the environment that they're in. And I thought that visually, these maps and the shape of the maps would pair well with the shape of the plants. So the step was for me to cut them all up to the same size, arrange them in a visually pleasing way, very intentional, concerning the composition. Now, the next steps, I got so excited about my project that I failed to document the rest of it with pictures. So I want you to imagine me gluing all of these squares down on a backing piece of paper, and then comes the sewing. Now, sewing seems pretty simple, except for I'm sewing paper, not fabric. And so fabric, if it's bigger than the sewing machine, you can bunch up. You can't exactly do that with paper. And you will notice that these are pretty large posters. So the problem, how do I fit this into a sewing machine? what I had to do is I had to roll up the paper and just kind of guide each poster all the way through the sewing machine. It was a little bit difficult, and each diagonal here, we have double stitching in both directions. I also stitched the words on the middle of each poster. So we have identity, inspiration, and influence. In all, just the sewing portion of this project probably took about 30 hours. I'm not a procrastinator, and I did not procrastinate on this project, but the night before this was due will be a very distinct memory in my college career because I was up all night sewing. So here we have the results. I was very intentional about the visuals that I chose. We have the yellow poster for inspiration. I was thinking about color psychology. Inspiration is the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. So I think light bulb, ideas are bright. That's what I was thinking with the yellow poster. And then for green, I was thinking about influence. Influence, for me at least, is always changing, always growing. And so I wanted to represent that growth through the color green. And lastly, for blue, we have identity. That is just the fact of being who or what a person or thing is. Blue is a really calm color, psychologically, and so I wanted to present identity as a calming, stable thing. And also, when I think of the essence of a person, a lot of times people think of ghosts or like this ghostly blue color that I think came out and translated well with that. So in all, this is visually how I chose to represent these concepts of nature and nurture intertwining. What is it that makes people who they are? Well, I would argue that nature and nurture weave together to form the beauty of individuality. Thank you.
Are there questions for our speaker?
Yes.
So what was it that made you choose the quilt? Is that something that's big in your own history, family?
Yes, sewing is really big in my family, and my collective body of work as an artist for the past year, I've been exploring ideas of family, legacy, memory, and so naturally I've been using a lot of fabric patterns and lots of references to sewing or fabric, and so that's why that means so much to me with this. Yes?
How many hours do you think you put into this altogether?
Well, hours-wise, I would say probably about 60. It's hard to tell because it is over the span of a whole month that I made this. It did take a long time, but I would say that it was so worth it. This is definitely a major portfolio piece.
Any other questions for our speaker?